Well, there's one part of charging an EV that is, well, it's really, really overlooked, and we're going to have a deep dive into that one right now. So stick with us. It's going to get rather interesting because it is a totally new direction. I'm Dave. Welcome to Dave Takes It On. Well, when you look at any car, I've got my car outside at the moment, it spends 80% of its time parked and locked. That's it. Doesn't really matter what I'm doing, whether I'm going long distance or whether I'm just going locally. 80% of the time it's parked and locked. Now, when I'm at home, it's nice and easy. I can have it plugged in. And that's great. It's a great advantage because it means that anytime I want to, I can just jump in the car, go on a journey. The battery's already part full. Now, I don't top it up to 100%. I wouldn't do that even if it was an LFP, which it isn't. I don't think that's good for any battery. But I can keep it at 60, 70 or 80% all the time. Leaving it in is also an advantage. In the summer, like it is at the moment, I think, when it gets really hot, from my app inside the house, I can just hit the cooling button, cool it down off the mains before I get in it. In the winter, the opposite, I can just push the heating button so I can defrost the windows and heat the inside of the cabin off the mains. So all these help. It may well be plugged in, but it has a battery management system, so it will only charge if it's necessary. If I've set the state of charge to 75% and it's plugged in, it's not charging if it's already at 75%. But it does mean that any time I want to go out in my car, it's somewhere around about 70 or 80%. I usually keep it at. That's great. It means I can go off anywhere. And that'll give me a range of around about 200 miles. Now, if I'm going on a longer journey, the night before, I can just top it up a little bit more, maybe 90%. I never go above 95, by the way. I just don't need to. More because of the way I drive than the battery. I'm going to come back to that in a second. So if I'm doing a long journey, it will be ready for me in the morning, so I can set off straight away without having to stop at a petrol station. Well, that's an advantage. So on my way to my destination, assuming it's further away than the range of my car, I will be taking a relatively leisurely drive and I will stop every 2 or 3 hours. That's me. That's about my limit. At one or more of those stops, I can plug it in, even for just 10 or 15 minutes, to help get me to my destination. And here is the secret. I try to make my destination near where there is something called destination charging. Some examples. I go to visit family in Swansea and Cornwall. Neither of my relatives at these destinations have EVs, but each does have an external weatherproof wall socket. I can plug in when I get there. Yeah, it's free, but that's not the main point. If I'm visiting grandchildren, I'll be there for quite a few hours. My Model S plugged into a 13-amp socket charges around 5-6 miles per hour plugged in. So if I stay there for most of the day, 6 hours, I can add 30, 40, 50 miles. And that's without me having to sit around waiting for it to charge. If we decide to go for a meal together, I'll try to select a pub or restaurant or hotel for lunch that has an EV charger for their customers to use. These are often free of charge and these are often 11 kilowatts. So again, while just having our meal, I can add more miles, 20, 30, 40 miles. We might then decide to go to the beach and spend a few hours there and park in a beach car park. And here's what's missing: destination charging. The missing link is the final location where I'm going to be spending a few hours or sometimes the whole day. My car's parked, I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing, beach, cinema, museum, retail park, National Trust property, list is endless, and it's here we need destination charging. And I mean literally 13 amp, 3 kilowatt charging weatherproof socket. That's all, but priced at a very reasonable rate, preferably free to use. Now, it must not be up around 40, 50 pence per kilowatt hour, as many of them are, as I might as well just go to Tesla Supercharger, pay less and do it instantly. But with electricity at around 25 pence per kilowatt hour, there must be a market for someone to offer a rate 30 or 40 pence. But looking back, I look at the early days of the internet when everyone was looking for ways to make money out of you being on the internet rather than offering products that made money. There were fees for visiting sites, there were fees for shopping online, and there was loads more. And then they finally realised that, well, there isn't a fee or charge for entering the physical shop out at the retail park when you're on foot. Who in the right mind would pay to go into a shop to see if they could find an item they might want to buy? No, the shop was there as a service, and the layout, the ambience, the product range and the pricing will be what makes you decide whether or not to buy. EV charging is at that exact same position. There are far too many people looking to see how they can screw you out of a few quid out of the EV drivers for parking. Let me bring you up to date. Retail parks offer free parking to attract you there to spend money in the shops. Supermarkets offer free parking to attract you there to spend in their stores. It must soon dawn on people that offering free charging to EV drivers could attract buyers there that might not otherwise go there. And before someone points out the obvious, this costs money, so does having the shop lights on or paying for staff. These are business expenses. But how dear would it be? Well, if what you're offering is a free 13 amp plug socket, we're looking at it'll provide no more than 3 kilowatts. So if an EV or a series of EVs, one after the other, are plugged in every day during opening hours, say 8 hours, it would consume about 24 kilowatt hours at the average UK electricity price for businesses or domestic of around about 25 pence. That'd be £6 a day. Probably an awful lot less than the lighting in the shop, and a massive amount less than running heating or air conditioning for the comfort and benefit of their customers for 8 hours a day. Do any of you know any shop that charges you extra when you buy something if the air conditioning is running or it isn't? Well, to prevent non-shoppers from just parking there all day, the shop could require you to go in and ask them to switch the socket on. Simple as that. Well, we really do need to get away from this idea of screwing visitors or shoppers or EV drivers for every penny they can get, and get into the idea of making a visit a more pleasurable experience. Well, looking into the future, we need a destination charging network. New homes already need an external socket to comply with local regs. Nothing fancy or expensive, can often just be a single external weatherproof socket rated at 13 amps. Absolutely ample. This will mean that when visiting family or friends in the future, you'll be able to get a small top-up charge while you're there, and they will hardly complain about the £1 or £2 it's going to cost on their electricity bill, as they in turn will get free destination charging when they visit you. Older properties need to be retrospectively added with external sockets. Well, if everyone I visit has off-road or street-side charging at even just 13 amps, that's a huge network. If anyone visits me, they can use my charger free. I don't charge family, particularly not as even a full charge of 50 kilowatts, even at peak times, is likely to cost less than a tenner. Well, locally I have a number of restaurants, shops and some car parks that offer free parking to visitors. Now I use these. If I have a choice of a hotel or rental property, one has free EV charging and the other offers similar facilities and features but doesn't, I'll probably prefer the one with free charging. I stay away on business quite often, and I found that in town or city centres, the typical hotels like Travelodge, Premier Inn and similar, they just charge for parking. At Chester East Services on the M56, Jonas and I were recently told that you can book a personal parking space at the hotel there. It's a Super 8 hotel. And you get a parking bay, and that's yours for the duration of your stay. The charger was free. Just to confirm, I rang them up just this morning to check on this, and yeah, those charges are free of charge. So what an attraction to get people to stay there, and people might spend 10 or 20 quid on charging over the weekend. Or the time they spend there. One of my local National Trust properties offers free charging to members. If I'm there 4 or 5 hours, it adds to a sensible number of miles to my range. Well, the principle of destination charging is that anywhere and everywhere you go, you just plug in and you just add a few miles or a few dozen at a very low or free cost. Then when you're ready for the long journey back, you just visit a rapid or ultra-rapid charge and you top up and pay for it. Well, recently over in Spain, it was a total revelation to find that seaside parking in most of Spain is not charged. The car parks are free. Car park fast charges in beach and shopping centres are also often totally free. Many fast chargers throughout France are offered totally free. Is it just us in the UK still trying to screw motorists and EV drivers? Is it just me that hates the idea that over here you can buy a scrap piece of land and stick a sign up and offer charge parking as a legitimate business? But I do have to finish on a comical note and a genuine true story. I was a rep on the road. I covered Devon and Cornwall for a while. I always look for interesting places to stop for a coffee break, pee break, or for lunch. Many of the attractions, like the Eden Project, Flambards, they offered residents season tickets for the price of a single visit. So you go there once and you pay, and then you can revisit as often as you like throughout the whole of the year. When Seaton, South Devon, there was a pub on the beach. Alongside it was a piece of land that offered paid parking with easy access to the beach. I love this place. You could just stop there, pay a quid or so for the car park, buy your lunch, go and sit on the beach for half an hour. That was it. The car park wasn't free. There was an elderly gentleman there collected the parking fee and he issued you with a ticket. I claimed that back on expenses. Well, anyhow, for more than a decade it worked flawlessly, hundreds of cars a day parked there, till one day he wasn't there. And the people pulling up to park, I wasn't one of the early ones, but people pulling up to park looked around for him, searched for a ticket machine, nothing. Finally, they went into the pub. The landlord said, well, it's nothing to do with us. It's the local council. So he rang the local council and they said, no, we don't own the land. It's nothing to do with us. There's no paid parking at that location. And they don't know anything about anyone collecting any money. Well, it turns out nobody ever claimed the land for their own. Nobody ever found the identity of the elderly gentleman. To this day, nobody even knows if he is still alive. I like to think that he made a very nice little pension, maybe 100 or so quid a day in the season, and enjoyed life that much more for the financial freedom it gave him. Plus, the friendships he would have built up from the regulars and the tourists alike. Maybe we need a lot more people like him. Well, I'm Dave. Thanks very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please click the like button. And if you would like to see more, please subscribe.